The light is fading. A warm orange sky leans into the rooftops, its colour caught in puddles along the winding road. Evening doesn't arrive all at once in the countryside. It seeps in, quietly, through the chimneys, over the fields, through the breath of animals settling into their straw. And in this softened world, as shadows stretch and yawn across the lanes, your thoughts begin to wander to a small place of flickering firelight and voices. The medieval tavern. You begin your journey by foot, wrapped in a scratchy woolen cloak. The air smells like cooling stone, wood smoke, and something slightly sour. Maybe spilled beer, maybe boiled cabbage. You pass under a timber arch, past low doorways and crooked windows with candlelight inside. There's no hum of electricity, no buzz of neon signs. The only invitation is instinct and the occasional wooden shingle creaking in the breeze, painted with a symbol, a boot, a crown, a barrel, or a red lion. You don't need to read words, most people can't. Before you reach the tavern itself, you pause to consider where you're going. In the medieval world, drinking houses were not all the same. A tavern, specifically, sold wine, imported and often expensive, though this term evolved and mingled over time with alehouse and inn. It's a messy taxonomy. The lines blur. Alehouses, usually operated out of kitchens and front rooms by women, were common and cozy. Inns were more structured, accommodating travellers with rooms, beds and food. But the tavern was different. A place of social glue, a meeting hall, a theatre, a rumour mill, a refuge, and sometimes a powder keg. And it was often the very beating heart of a village or town. You step forward. Your boots strike the cobblestone softly, irregular, uneven, the kind that forces you to walk slowly and look where you're going. A donkey brays somewhere behind a fence. Laughter bounces off plaster walls from a small group gathered near a shuttered window. It's impossible to know if it's joy or mockery. You turn the corner and there it is. The tavern. It doesn't look like much. A squat, timber-framed building, its beams blackened with age and soot. Its daub and wattle walls are cracked in places, its door heavy and hung on iron hinges. Smoke wafts up from the chimney in a steady ribbon. You can already hear the muffled thump of dancing feet and the clink of pottery mugs. No glass lines the windows, only horn, scraped thin and oiled to let in the dimmest of light. Or perhaps nothing at all, just wooden shutters that creak like old knees. You pull open the door, and at once, the cold night air slips off your back like a shawl. Inside, everything changes. It's darker than you expected. The fire in the hearth is blazing, but much of the light is caught in the smoke hanging thick beneath the low ceiling. The scent is overwhelming. Wood smoke, wet wool, sweat, meat stewing in onion broth, dried herbs crushed underfoot, stale ale in soaked straw. Somewhere, a dog lies curled beneath a bench, tail twitching in dreams. The floor is earthen, perhaps covered in rushes, replaced only every few weeks, or longer. Mixed with ashes, bones, and bits of food, it gives off its own ancient perfume. Overhead, beams stretch across the room like ribs in a belly. From them hang bunches of rosemary, thyme, and lavender, not just for smell, but to ward off illness and insects. And maybe, just maybe, to appease restless spirits. You don't sit at a private table. There are none. Only long benches, shared. You find a spot near the hearth, careful not to make eye contact with the wrong person. There's an unspoken etiquette here. Speak too loudly, and you might invite attention. Speak too softly, and you might seem suspicious. Sit too far from the fire, and you're a stranger. Sit too close, and someone might wonder if you're trying to listen in. At the center of it all is the taverner. He or she controls the room like a quiet magistrate. Their face is lined, their apron stained, their hands strong from lifting casks and settling disputes. They serve the drinks, maintain the peace, and know everyone's secrets. In some towns, the taverner is wealthier than the miller or the blacksmith. In others, they're just barely scraping by, their profits gobbled up by taxes, bribes, and unpredictable harvests. You order a drink. But what is a medieval drink? Not beer as we know it. Not yet. More likely a cloudy ale, thick with grain sediment and slightly sour from open-air fermentation. Brewed by local women, often called alewives, these drinks were essential to survival. Water was often unsafe, especially near towns. Ale, at least, had been boiled, and its alcohol content, though low, helped preserve it. Sometimes the ale is flavoured with herbs, called groot. Mugwort, yarrow, even heather or nettle. Hops wouldn't become widespread until later centuries. You take a sip. It's warm, earthy, slightly bitter, and strangely filling. There's no foam, no chill, no carbonation, but it's real. It's alive. As you drink, you listen to the crackle of the fire, the clatter of a spoon in a wooden bowl, the low rumble of a man reciting a tale. Half history, half fantasy. He speaks of Saxon ghosts and Norman knights, of lost treasure in the fens and a nun who turned into a swan. A woman laughs until she coughs. A child, perhaps the taverner's, sits in the corner, tracing circles in the soot with a stick. Around you are all the threads of medieval life. A merchant, his hands stained with ink and coin. A shepherd, smelling of wool and lanolin. A dishevelled priest, tipsy and preaching loudly to no one. And you, an observer, a visitor, a ghost of the future seated at the fire. But you're not alone. The tavern was where things happened, where men made promises they couldn't keep, where marriages were proposed and rescinded, where a traveller might boast one ale too many and wake up missing a purse, where songs were sung, sometimes with tears in the eyes, where peace was made, and sometimes violence too. It was not glamorous, it was not safe, but it was human. And now, as your eyes begin to close, and the fire crackles on, and the ale settles warm in your stomach, you begin to feel what they felt. That, for all the hardship outside, taxes, wars, plagues, this room for a few hours was a small shelter of warmth, food, and laughter. The medieval tavern, imperfect, impure, and unforgettable. And the night has only just begun. You sit there, still, warm now in the glow of the fire. Your hands rest around the wooden cup, the ale inside only half finished. Its bitter aftertaste lingers on your tongue, something herbal, almost medicinal. Around you, the murmur of the room rises and falls like a gentle tide. Boots shuffle across straw, laughter comes in low gusts. Someone sneezes into the crook of their arm. And then, your stomach growls. You look around, quietly wondering, what is there to eat in a medieval tavern? The answer: depends. Unlike a modern restaurant with printed menus, laminated and predictable, medieval taverns served whatever they had. The concept of a menu did not yet exist. Food was seasonal, local, and deeply tied to what could be preserved or gathered. The tavern didn't offer choice, it offered sustenance. The taverner or his wife might bring out a bowl of pottage, the most common dish of the day. Thick, grey-brown, and steaming. It's not beautiful, but it's nourishing. A slow-cooked stew made from beans, peas, onions, leeks, cabbage, and maybe a bone or two if you're lucky. Grains are often stirred in to make it more filling, barley or oats. It smells of salt and thyme, a little smoke, a little garlic. Bread is the true centerpiece. But it isn't soft or white or yeasted. It's rough, made with rye or barley, dense and dark, with a cracked surface like old bark. Sometimes it's days old, meant to be dipped in broth and softened. In some taverns, the bread is used as a trencher, a sort of edible plate. The thick slice holds the stew or meat, soaking up juices until it's eaten or discarded to dogs. If you are in a wealthier part of town, or if you've coin to spare, you might find something more, salted pork, or dried fish, boiled eggs, perhaps even a meat pie. But remember, meat is a luxury. It's often preserved, salted beyond recognition, and requires boiling just to soften. Fresh meat is rare, reserved for feast days or noble tables. The average person tastes it maybe once a week, if that. There is cheese, if you ask. Pale, crumbly, sharp. Likely made just a few miles away, aged in a cellar, wrapped in cloth. Eggs too, sometimes hard-boiled in ashes or served cold in vinegar. And for dessert, nothing sweet in the modern sense. Sugar is wildly expensive. Honey, if you're lucky. But more often, dried fruit, figs, raisins, maybe stewed apples thickened with barley flour. The food is plain but honest. It tells the truth of the land and its people. You eat slowly, listening. There's a rhythm to the tavern's atmosphere that can't be rushed. It breathes, it waits. It has its own music, and now that music begins. From somewhere in the back, a corner near the stairs, comes the sharp twang of a lute string being tested. Not in tune. Then again. Then again. A man in a patched leather jerkin begins to pluck a slow melody. It's not polished, not concert-worthy, but it pulls attention like a magnet. Music in the medieval tavern isn't formal. There are no set performances. Anyone might sing. Anyone might play. Instruments are shared. Lutes, fiddles, drums, hurdy-gurdies, bagpipes. A woman pulls out a recorder and begins a lilting, airy tune that blends with the fire's crackle. Her hair is braided with thread. Her voice, when it joins the melody, is soft, like mist curling over morning grass. The songs vary. Some are old ballads, full of sorrow and loss, of knights never returned, of daughters who ran off with sailors. Others are bawdy, full of rhymes about monks who drink too much and millers who marry their cousins. The room laughs, not politely, not softly, but with full chests and open mouths. It's a laughter that seems to lift the very roof beams. And then the stories begin. A man with scarred hands stands, ale sloshing from his cup. He tells of a creature in the woods, eyes like coals, teeth like knives. It lives near the river, he says, and takes sheep, sometimes children. Is it true? No one knows. No one asks. It's not about truth. It's about belonging, the shared nods, the wide eyes, the chorus of "I" when the punchline lands. These tales are part of the oral tapestry of medieval life. History, legend, superstition, and gossip blur together until no one remembers where fact ends and fable begins. But it doesn't matter, not here. In a small tavern like this, entertainment comes from the people themselves. There are no televisions, no books to read quietly in the corner. Entertainment is live, spontaneous, born of the moment. It can be song or dance or insult. Yes, insult. There are verbal duels, exchanges of witty barbs, the sort of sharp-tongued play that might seem rude elsewhere, but here, it's a sport, a test of wit. Someone mocks a merchant for his bald head. He fires back about a neighbour's missing teeth. The room erupts. There are games too. Dice mostly, carved from bone or wood. Cards are rare, not yet common in many places. Some men play draughts or chess if a board is available. Wagers are made. Coins are passed under the table. A lucky roll means more ale. A losing streak might mean walking home empty-handed, but not everything is light-hearted. Tempers flare. A drunken shove, a poorly received joke. The taverner watches carefully. Too much disorder, and the local reeve might shut the place down. Or worse, fine it under one of the many laws regulating ale quality and public disorder. The line between revelry and riot is thin, especially when the fire is hot and the cups are full. And above all, you must remember, who you are determines what you can do. If you are a peasant, you know your place. Speak too boldly to a landowner, and you risk trouble. If you are a woman, your presence here might be noted or judged. In some towns, women were banned from taverns entirely after dark. In others, they ran them. It varies, but eyes watch, always. If you are a cleric, your drinking is frowned upon, but common. Some friars were notorious for loud nights and early hangovers. If you are a noble, you rarely set foot in a common tavern. You drink in halls, in private feasts, or at designated inns. To mix with the common folk is rare and risky. Still, once inside these walls, the distinctions blur. Status softens. A knight might lose to a blacksmith in dice. A priest might laugh at a carpenter's joke. A beggar might sing a song that moves the whole room to silence. For a brief few hours, the tavern becomes a strange kind of equalizer. And as your bowl is emptied, your cup drained, your ears filled with stories and sound, you begin to understand something else. This is more than a place to eat and drink. It's a place to feel alive. Even in a world ruled by silence, darkness and toil, the tavern is a spark of human warmth, glowing gently in the shadows. The fire is lower now. Embers glow like coals in a long-forgotten forge. The music has faded into soft humming, the kind that lingers after the last verse is sung, when voices are too tired for melody but too full for silence. Some have already left. Others have slumped in corners, their breath heavy, curled in cloaks or with heads rested on tabletops. A jug rolls lazily across the floor. No one picks it up. Your cup is empty, not drained hastily, but slowly, over hours, with each sip warming your chest and softening the edges of the world. The taverner wipes down a table, muttering to himself. His work never ends. He knows who paid and who didn't, who drank too much, who flirted too long, who asked too many questions. His eyes are tired, but sharp. You rise. The room creaks in response. A stool shifts beneath your boots. You steady yourself, not drunk, but comfortably off balance, as if the walls themselves have loosened slightly with the ale. You nod to the taverner. He does not smile. He simply nods back. That's enough. You pull open the door, and the night greets you like an old friend. The cold is sharper now, after the heat of the fire. The village lies under a soft blanket of mist. Candles flicker behind shutters, some snuffed out entirely. A dog barks far off. The stars above are clearer than you remember, scattered like spilled grain across black velvet. The moon, pale and heavy, hangs low over thatched roofs. Your walk home begins. It's slow, unhurried. The tavern's echoes follow you. A laugh, a tune, a shouted goodbye that fades into nothing. You step carefully through ruts and puddles, your cloak pulled tight again. The road is uneven, stone, dirt. In some places, just worn earth where thousands of feet have passed. The tavern lies behind you like a memory already slipping into dream. But as you walk, your mind lingers on what you saw, what you felt. Not just warmth and laughter, but something deeper. The texture of a life lived slowly, a world without screens or traffic or clocks, a place where news is passed from mouth to mouth, where history is sung rather than written, where human connection is physical, proximity, breath, eye contact, and consequences. Yes, they wait too. A man who drank too much might wake in the mud, penniless, with a bruised face and no recollection of how he got there. Another might stumble into the church the next morning, seeking forgiveness from a priest who had shared the same jug hours earlier. A farmer might return home to a furious wife, or worse, to the silence of an empty hearth. There were fights. There were thefts. There were regrets. But also, there was community. There was the subtle, aching joy of being part of something, of being seen, of being known. In many ways, the medieval tavern was more than a place. It was a ritual, a sanctuary from the daily grind of field, forge, and market. A place to hear new ideas or argue old ones, to sing, to cry, to fall in love for a night, or to forget someone's name entirely by morning. And while the physical taverns themselves are mostly gone, rotted, rebuilt, or replaced, their spirit lingers in the creak of old wooden beams, in the way a story takes hold in a room, in the ritual of drink shared in company, not for thirst, but for memory, for forgetting, for the fragile thread of connection it weaves between strangers. You stop for a moment in the quiet lane, ahead, your home, a small room, a hard bed, perhaps a candle still burning. You reach for the door and pause, just briefly, to look back. Though the tavern is out of sight, you know where it was. You know what it meant. And as you close the door behind you, your last thought before sleep is not of what was said or done, but how it felt. Like firelight on a winter night, like music carried on smoke, like a world half lost, but never quite forgotten. And so you sleep, dreaming of voices in the dark, of ancient laughter, of a tavern that may never have existed, but somehow always will.